Welcome to another episode of the Reboot Chronicles, a no-holds-barred forum with global leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, and CEOs about how organizations stay focused on growth and innovation in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean Tobias, coming to you live from Reviv's North American headquarters in Chicago, and we would like to thank you for joining us from around the globe today. I'd like to welcome Paul Jacobson to the Reboot Chronicles. Paul is the CEO of Thorne HealthTech, a rapidly growing NASDAQ-listed company that provides people with personalized approaches to health and wellness. One of my favorite topics, as you know. As a science-driven company targeting consumers, athletes, health professionals, and organizations, Thorne utilizes artificial intelligence to deliver personalized, proactive, and actionable solutions for people like us who want to improve their health and live healthier, longer lives. Sign me up for that, by the way. Sounds good. They were an early natural supplement provider. Thorne, since then, has gone through a bunch of reboots, some of them very smart, over the decades. And we're going to unpack that with Paul today. So, Paul, it's great to see you.
It was nice seeing you, Dean. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. We love talking about companies that have been, you guys have been around since the 80s, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was founded in Idaho, and I had been on the board of a public biotech company, and was the co-chair when it was going through its IPO, and my co-chair had been the former CEO of Sanofi, and I was always giving him a hard time about the side effects of some of the drugs, and he challenged me to start a natural product company, and I spent 3 years doing research, and came upon Thorne mostly on the recommendation of some private equity firms that have been trying to buy the company, which had sales about $20 million back then. And I spent a couple of years trying to buy the company, and finally, at the end of 2010, we were successful in doing it. So the company really had been, it was a great little niche, but it hadn't been growing.
Right. And then you came in and thankfully, you've gone through some crazy reboots. I mean, you started out mostly direct to practitioner. Then you had a merger involved, which seemed to have worked out well. Then you added DTC, direct to consumer, for those of you that aren't into that stuff, and all kinds of business models. And then my favorite thing, you threw in an IPO just for fun. So tell us about your journey. Just try to give us a little personal view of that's a lot in less than around a decade.
Yep. So you're right. We started off selling directly to practitioners. Most of those practitioners were what they call functional medicine doctors. So most of them were naturopaths and non-medical doctors, as you typically see, non-MDs. So we began by trying to take on the challenge of moving the company into the medical doctor space, because that's where most of the patients reside. And in order to do that, you need the science and the data behind what you're selling for a medical doctor to get involved. I actually chose the Mayo Clinic as the ideal partner because we knew they'd be the toughest and the most skeptical.
It's a good place to start.
And began by getting to know one of the doctors at Mayo who had a very progressive approach to wellness and thought that preventive health was going to be important in the future. And he asked me, "How patient are you?" And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because to get in here, it's going to take you several years if everything goes right." And basically that's what we did. And so we've grown our medical doctor business aggressively, and then made the decision to move into the direct-to-consumer side of things. That came at great risk because there were a number of physicians who did not want us to do it. But we made the decision it was going to be critical to our growth.
Absolutely. And having run companies like AutoWeb and others, public companies that were both DTC and you have the B2B side, it's like you're running two different companies. That's the other risk. And not to get too geeky here, but from an operations point of view, not for the faint of heart, so to speak.
Yeah, we took a lot of criticism for it, but it turned out to be one of the best moves we've ever made. Our consumer business is now about half of our total business. And it's actually made us much better at technology, which now the doctors are very thankful for. So they don't have to maintain inventory, and they can rely on our technology to help grow their business as well. And doctors are great for our overall business because about 60% of our customers in a survey said they first heard about us through their physician. So they're a great customer acquisition cost lowering machine for us.
I know a lot of brands that wish they could say that, especially ones that are in supplements, direct to consumer. They have no channel there. So before we kind of dig into your business model and the platform and partners and all that, can you just, those listening are probably going, what is it that he's selling? So you do both devices and supplements, and can you just give everybody a quick grounding of what you're actually marketing?
So what we're trying to do is build a company that maintains a scientific rigor in the natural space that you would typically see in biotech or pharma. So we're more like a natural biotech company that's profitable and growing with revenue.
We just had the CEO of Genentech on, so
without the risk profile.
Exactly.
Right. We also don't have the same upside as Genentech.
Well, yeah, but their 20-year horizon, the long-term investments that they do are crazy. I hope yours are a little shorter-term payoffs. But you seem to have a very long-term patient view. Otherwise, you wouldn't be where you are right now.
Yeah. So we then decided that making the greatest supplements in the world, which is what we try to do through our own manufacturing platform, was not enough. And we saw that in order to lead in preventive health, or what we call scientific wellness, we would need to provide more and more data. And we built an AI and machine learning team. We did it outside with some very famous computer scientists and regular scientists. And we started a company called Longevity. And that it was designed to do blood and microbiome testing and analytics and personalized solutions for people. After we were successful in building it and saw that we could commercialize it, Thorne acquired it. So that was really the merger that you were referring to, was between Thorne and Longevity.
It's kind of an inside combination. Yeah, very smart.
Yeah. And then, so we tend to try to start things ourselves, and if they look like they're going to work, we bring them in-house. And so we brought that together, and effectively what we're doing is we're making the products, but we take the customer on a journey, which starts with a test, which could be a blood test, a microbiome test, et cetera. We tend to focus on testing that is more complicated, where we can't be copied as easily. And we tend to focus on the consumer UX. So we offer a complicated test, we deliver the information, we educate the consumer what it means, we offer a supplement, diet and exercise solution if needed. If it's not needed, we don't offer the product. And then we use that platform and what we learn to make better and better products along the way. And then we noticed that the consumer user experience was going to be difficult. Right now, most blood is collected either through a venipuncture draw or through a finger stick. Neither of them are particularly, they have their downside.
Yeah.
So we acquired a company called Drawbridge Health that collects blood from a device that's painless. It's been through a major clinical trial to prove its efficacy and accuracy. The blood is collected painlessly. The cartridge is removed, and you can put it in the post without putting it in cold chain, and sent to the independent lab.
Really?
The other big challenge we had was microbiome testing, which is a fecal sample. It's probably the worst user experience that you can imagine if you're going to invent a product.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of our scientists went out and got drunk and decided that they had to change the user experience. So they came up with a microbiome wipe, and we invented it, patented it, and have now launched it, which completely changes the consumer UX for microbiome testing. So all of these things are used to personalize information and then the products that we sell.
I love your approach. I mean, to me, the two most important things are the most amazing users, whatever we used to call it, UX experiences, but this whole user experience thing is not the first item on the list, especially with med tech kind of companies. It's becoming that more and more. We started an incubator in Chicago called Matter that really focuses a lot on UX, but you also came up with things that made you competitively differentiable in the market, because there's no shortage of people coming after this space now. And third, the DTC thing, everyone was saying it was such a bad idea back then. People are tripping over themselves to get into it now, and you've got a foothold there. I usually don't give out compliments like this, but you've got all the right components, it seems.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that, we made the right moves
early,
but I will also tell you that once you hit a certain scale, the direct-to-consumer market has different challenges, and I would say that this is, if there's one thing that makes me nervous, it's trying to figure out how to achieve bigger and bigger scale in a way that doesn't copy what everybody else is doing, because
exactly
there's some level of revenue that seems to be very difficult for companies to exceed profitably.
Yeah, and most of the DTC guys in health, beauty, and wellness they're getting to a certain level, and then they're getting bought out by Unilever or someone else. So they're not worried about the long game, and you are. There's definitely some tricks there. We've actually talked about some of that on the podcast before, but probably for another day. I having run a couple of public companies myself and taken them out. What was that like for you? And is it something that's helping you now, or sometimes I like to be a private company for as long as possible. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. So it's an interesting question. I get asked all the time, do you think you did the right thing? Because our stock price, even though our financials are awesome, the stock price is not reflecting it.
Usually doesn't.
So I think part of the problem when you go public without comps, so there are no public company comps, so the analysts don't really understand us, and we get a mixture of analysts that have never covered a company like ours. So that's one of the challenges. I would say that we made the right move in two respects, and I would highly recommend it to anybody. We didn't need the cash, but we put it to good use.
Mm-hmm.
And when we went public, and so we got it at a time I was very bearish on the stock market, and I think having done it while the market was still good was a smart move for us financially. It's a pain in the neck being public, but I think it was the right move financially at the time. The other thing it's done is it's given companies, big companies who are now looking at us for partnerships and other business opportunities, are comfortable that they can pick up, they can go on the internet and look us up in a way that makes them comfortable. They can see our financials. So I would say that part of it, the transparency aspect of it, is really good. And then there are negatives to it as well.
Yeah, like your competitors being able to see everything.
The short-termism, but other than that, it's fine.
Short-termism and competitive exposure, I always say. I mean, most of the comps, those are comparables, so people can kind of estimate what you're worth. Those of you that don't are into that stuff are private. There's companies like Femtech that was on recently. It's done just a bunch of roll-ups who've been acquiring companies like crazy, but just focus on women's health in a deep sort of way. Others like testing like Viome, and others like Better Health, which is more comprehensive. And so I'm kind of weaving into partnerships here. So many of them are doing pretty integrated partnerships with, insurers, providers, companies. You've done a bunch of partnerships. So before we kind of jump into what's next, maybe just tell us a little bit about, for instance, something I wouldn't have thought of is, you've got into esports, but before that you were in hardcore athletes who really need good scientific proven regimens and personalized alternative, medicines and things. So that you started the hard stuff first, and now it seems like that's helping you move into things like esports, which is really more gamers.
Yeah. So we've done a number of partnerships that, for reasons that are people say, why the hell did you do that? They're not obvious. So, the first one we did was with the UFC, and people were saying, well, why would a company in preventive health want to get involved with the UFC?
Of course.
The medical team at UFC is extremely open about concussion and deeply concerned about it.
Right.
And so we're able to work with them on the concussion front to do some really good work. And you're going to see soon that we'll be launching a product for the prevention and treatment of concussion based on what we've learned together with them and with Mayo Clinic.
That's amazing.
The reason we did esports had some similarities to other things we've done. It came to us through a combination of people here at Thorne that knew Team Liquid, but also there was a connection between one of our medical people in the sports side and the medical person at Team Liquid. So there are people, these people are very serious about cognitive health. And this is an area that it's a deep concern to us for our future. It's an area that we think we can add a lot of value. And we really wanted to do this partnership because we think we're going to be able to do some clinical trial work with them on cognitive health.
And the esports business is, a multi-billion-dollar business. They're all kind of, lack of a better word, jacked up on Red Bull. Most of them, younger audience, but they're like dehydrated. So this is probably a good. I mean, some people would laugh at that and say it's like, no, that's what most people do in their offices all day. They're sitting there. And so I see a lot of parallel into organizational partnerships, whether it's a corporation or the institutions or whatever. And esports itself is almost the extreme case.
Yeah, and they're very serious about their approach to gaming as a sport. So it's great. I mean, they're great. It's a great target group for us.
What when you look at some of these partnerships, without giving away your secrets, but whatever you've done publicly, it's just what's like the secret sauce business model? What's the most interesting? I get the sponsorship ones. I get the ones that want to help their community, whether it's a organizational community or a vertical or whatever, women or men or whatever their target audience is. But in terms of any other examples of ones where there's a business model behind it, where it's a win-win-win?
Well, yeah. So the places we're most successful tend to be places that want to do research. And while there may be some revenue component to it, that's not the preeminent concern that they've got. The preeminent concern they've got is, can we do something for their community on the research side? And can we show evidence that they're actually improving in their health? And so what we have a lot of MDs and MD PhDs on our staff, and including people in the sports side. And so having built up these relationships over 10 years is not something that people can easily replicate. And I think that's been the secret sauce, the ability of our team to be so good at what they're doing with these people.
Exactly. And there's no shortage of other leagues that would be good targets for it. It seems like your approach, I mean, you've almost got 50,000 healthcare providers that are prescribing this. Are these usually general practitioners or?
It's really all over the map. Like I said earlier, it tended to be more the functional medicine doctors. And I actually think that COVID was the tipping point for doctors.
It must have.
I think when they began to see the data about how unhealthy the population was, some of the inquiry we've been getting from very serious medical institutions who hear about us through one place or another has really gone up. And so I really believe COVID was the tipping point for preventive health, and we're not going back anytime soon. We're seeing a lot of new things coming our way because of it.
I love that. Here we are, 2023, and everyone's looking back on that time, and so many industries have been reshaped and changed for the good. I mean, the fact that your partnerships are more interested in the data is just amazing, because usually they're interested in e-commerce. And to me, it's like, what about the education? What about the engagement? What about how do you get them excited and involved? And then maybe they can buy some things. But I like that that's not the tip of the spear, so to speak.
At least for us, it's not. I mean,
I'm sure you'd love. I'm sure you'd love the revenue, but I think
we don't excel at writing checks to people for sponsorships. So that's not what we.
Oh, I didn't even mean it that way. That's just the opposite.
No, but I'm just saying it. Yeah.
And aren't you like one of the only supplement manufacturers that's collaborating with Mayo, or at least I know you were the first. That's for darn sure.
I believe I believe that's.
I mean, that is
true. We're running clinical trials with them in some very interesting areas. One of them is looking for ways to treat women nutritionally pre and post breast cancer treatment.
Yep.
So we're using a multi-omics approach in a clinical trial with Mayo in that field. And then another, we just completed a trial on concussed athletes, looking for a solution to whether we can improve brain function in athletes that have concussion. And Mayo brought in another group that has a device called NeuroCatch that worked with us on that as well. And they've been great research partners.
Oh, they're phenomenal. I've worked with them a little bit before, but the whole the other thing we saw coming out of COVID at Revive, which is health, beauty, and wellness AI analytics. Take a selfie, recommends all the different products. So all the retailers and the beauty brands, and now adding into supplement brands, are using it, to engage and help people kind of filter their decision down. You can augment it with more scientific data that you have. But what we learned is health, beauty, and wellness have been coming together from a beauty perspective, and health and wellness have been coming together and targeting beauty. So it's
Right.
fascinating to see how it's all kind of coming together, as people are just as concerned with what they put on their body versus in their body, and more importantly, vice versa. To use a bad phrase, but I think that has taken the TAM, the total addressable market, the size of this thing, to a completely new level where companies like yours you're creating a category, number one, or rebooting old categories. And I don't know what you look at in terms of your target audience. That's the long question here, and the size of the market. But what's your thought there, given what's happened over the last few years?
Yeah. So it's funny. When we were going public, we submitted a TAM slide to the underwriters that was $4.5 trillion, which basically at the time made it bigger than the oil market. They decided to cut us back to 350
They always give it a
billion.
haircut. That's how they make their money.
Yeah. They cut us all the way back to 350 billion.
Oh my gosh.
So here's what I would say. We look at the target audience in terms of the truly addressable market for what we think we do well. So we want to continue to grow our physician channel. We think there's a lot of upside there, especially if I'm right about COVID being the tipping point. We see partnerships as a huge opportunity: travel, athletics, devices, recovery market. All these are areas where we are either thinking about or having conversations with companies that we want to work with. And then I would say that we want to continue to look for B2B opportunities. So we are talking to some companies about our devices. We think the corporate wellness market, if done right, we've been studying it now for a year, laying out a plan for how to enter that market correctly. Working with venture studios to do product market fits, et cetera. So those are things that we're looking at doing in the future. We see tremendous sort of interest from hotels and spas and the travel industry, all looking for ways to sort of get some sort of a jump on the wellness space. And that's what kind of, I was kidding, but in a way I wasn't. That if you can count all sorts of stuff in this gigantic TAM of $4.5 trillion. Whether it's relevant or not, I'm not sure yet. But we think there's an awful lot of growth opportunities for us if we're patient.
Exactly. You hit on something that most companies in your industry never talk about, which is the travel industry. So I was talking with the CEO of one of the companies that manages all the stores and shops inside most of the airports, and they're seeing a shift to that as well. First of all, people want to use something to just give them a little data and say, here's all the products you might be interested in the store, because they're stocking more and more, but they can't have them on the shelf, but people can recommend. Right. But, usually they just have like Airborne, which is like a little vitamin C thing or whatever, or Emergency is a vitamin C one, or gum, like here's some things to keep you going, versus how do you really stay healthy on the road? And for someone who's on the road every week or two, I can see my health going up and down and up, or weight. Right. Maybe it's just my weight. I don't know. And I see other people who travel with me or whatever, and they're always like working out. They're at the gym. They're very regimented. So I like the way you say, hey, we personalize it. And sometimes it doesn't include a workout plan. Sometimes it is just about diet and supplemental things.
Yep.
I mean, that's the true meaning of personalization. And maybe we could just spend a couple minutes on that. So your AI technology, what does it do?
So we start building. We built tremendous databases on supplementation and food and exercise, and then we machine learn off of our tests.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll start with I'll use the microbiome test as an example. And we continue to learn more and more about what sort of products people can take, because the more people we take into the test, the more we learn about gut health.
Right.
And then it has allowed us to completely refocus the products we make for gut health. So, for instance, we learned an awful lot about prebiotics versus probiotics.
Right.
We've learned that a lot of commercial probiotics on the market don't do anything; they don't work.
But I feel good taking them.
We actually, we began to have questions about, based on what we've learned, about whether it might not be healthier to drink organic grass-fed milk versus some of the botanical milks. I mean, there's just so much I think people don't really know, but the products, these various things get sold all the time without real knowledge. And that's what we're really using our AI platform to do: give better information to consumers and help us build better.
And you can
products.
sort out the misinformation versus the disinformation. The disinformation, they're not trying to be evil. They're just they just thought it was helping. By the way, on personalization, so we've talked about things like your technology, we're recommending certain things, very similar to Revive, what it does for all the retailers and brands and stuff. But I see other companies, one or two have been on the program, that are actually making personalized supplements or beauty products or whatever. But let's stick with supplements. You're basically shipping, pre-manufactured ones. Do you see the personalization of what you take and I take? Is that going to be a big mass market? Because it seems very niche right now.
Yeah. So I'll tell you the steps we're taking in that market. I think when people say they're making personalized products for you, I think that's a little bit of and I'm not going to comment on the beauty market because I don't know it, okay? But I'm going to talk about supplements in general. I think it's a little bit of a misnomer.
Yeah.
So we started off by saying, all right, look, 80% of the problems we're seeing in gut health are occurring in this particular area, and we want to focus our product portfolio on that. And there might be 5 different product recommendations based on that for different people. So there's an element of personalization to that.
Agree.
What we're really trying to do, though, is be able to figure out how we can manufacture on a personalized basis, and that is really hard. So the first thing we did was we built this printing technology. We're making and the first 2 products we launched are through a 2-dimensional printer, where we basically built these proprietary food-based inks that spray onto a little disc, and that disc dissolves in water. And the first one we did was a children's vitamin, which is going after the gummy market. So we're creating a much healthier product for children that dissolve in water, so they can, kids from 4 years old on up that don't want to swallow pills can now start dealing with it. And we hope we can really personalize those discs by the way we manufacture. We did another one in the prebiotic space based on what we were learning in microbiome testing. So we think 2-dimensional printing is going to be our ticket to real personalization down the road.
Yeah, I agree. Haven't been chairman of a 3D printing company once. I love the way it's morphing into med tech. Paul, I really want to thank you for being on. I was wondering if you could leave us with maybe more of a personal reboot story. You have, like me, done so many things and so many companies and so many roles. I just would love some war stories here at the end, maybe to give our viewers some insights.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that on a personal basis, I didn't just go from one company to another. I made a massive career change. So I was a partner at Goldman Sachs and ran one of their trading areas. And when I eventually moved on, the first thing I realized was that if I wasn't willing to humble myself, I would never succeed. And I've seen so many people that we've looked at when we decide whether we're going to hire somebody or not, that is not 25 years old, but it's been in business for 20 or 30 years, right? Oftentimes those people cannot learn new things, or they're not willing. They always want to rely on what they learned on in the past. So, I'd say the biggest reboot for me was humbling myself and trying to learn something new, that not only was there a new topic, which is natural science, but then having to work with and partner with the kind of people that knew anything about manufacturing, and the level of hiring talent was so different than what I was used to. So I would say that that's been the biggest thing for me going forward.
I love it. And it ties into what you do. I mean, lifelong learning actually, I think, prolongs your life for your brain health anyway. And that's actually what your company's doing as well. Some of your products are scientifically way ahead of the market. So it's going to be a fun story to watch you guys over the next, I'll just say decade. Let's take the long view, but it's...
All right, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I really enjoyed you being on. You've been listening to... Excuse me. You've been listening to Paul Jacobson with the Thorne HealthTech, and this is Dean Tobias with the Reboot Chronicles. I want to thank you for joining us today, and we will see you soon.